Hi everyone, very quick one today, just a little watercolour sketch, pencil and wash on my usual Bockingford cold press paper. It's A5 size this time though, so it's quite a bit smaller. So I've just wet the paper all over and now I'm using yellow ochre just in the areas where I think it'd look good, which is more or less everywhere. Well, not quite everywhere. I'm just using ultramarine for the sky. Don't really want much of a sky there today, just a little suggestion of just something there just to fill that corner in a little bit. I'm using the White Nights paints today, but I've included a Cotman colour which is gamboge. The reason being, it's more of a transparent yellow. It's quite suited to sort of sunny landscapes, whereas the trouble with the White Nights yellows, particularly the cadmium lemon and the cadmium lemon and the cadmium yellow medium, which are the two I've got, they seem very opaque, so I thought the gamboge might not cover the pencil over quite so much, and it's not quite so acidy as the lemon yellow. It's got more of an orange tinge to it. It's quite a funny colour actually. It looks like yellow ochre when you squeeze it on the palette, but it goes on nice and transparent. Right, so I put French ultramarine in the background trees there and just sort of let it run in to the yellow ochre that was there. And now I'm using gamboge in this foreground tree. It kind of makes the graphite look a little bit olive green as it goes over it, which is a nice effect. And then in the lighter areas it kind of shines yellow as if like the tree is sort of backlit. That's the sort of effect I'm going for today, like a backlit effect. Sort of like a morning scene where the sun's just come up but there may be still a little bit of mist around, and the sun's just coming through the back of that foreground tree, and it's going to create sort of a halo effect on the middle ground trees there. And I've also tried to keep it fairly light at the back of the brick wall and the gates there, so I've got a nice contrast between the dark and the light, which should be nice for a focal point. I know it's not much of a focal point, but it should work quite nicely. And I'm using gamboge again, just there in the background trees, just on the smaller trees there, just to sort of bring them forward a little bit, just as if the sun's sort of catching one side of them, but they're still quite set back and a little bit hazy. I'm just dropping in a little bit of ultramarine in there as well, just where I think it'd look good. That's still just ultramarine, just dabbing it in here and there. I want that left hand side to be quite blue actually, to make it look like it's receding further off into the picture. I was actually going to title this video "How to Ruin a Perfectly Decent Drawing," but I thought perhaps that wouldn't get many views, so I decided otherwise. Perhaps I'm being a bit hard on myself there, but I mean, the painting's not brilliant. I'm still just getting used to the pigments in the White Nights range. You know, they do take some getting used to, especially when you've been used to using Winsor & Newton paints for years. To go straight onto something like White Nights is quite strange actually. You know, because they do behave differently to other paints. Yeah, so I'm just sort of getting used to them still. That's gamboge that I'm putting there around the middle distant trees. I'm trying to create that nice sort of halo effect. It looks a bit dark at the minute. Maybe lemon yellow would have probably been better for there, but when it dries it looks okay. I'm using a mix of scarlet red and ultramarine to make sort of a blue purple colour, just to drop into the middle of the trees just to create the shadow there. Just letting it run into the yellow so it all diffuses in sort of nice and soft. And I'm using a damp brush just to soften the base of the trees out. It looks a bit much at the minute, but it does dry okay. The same again there, I'm using gamboge for the grass verges. I'm just using a little bit of that purple shadow colour just here and there along the front edge. Gamboge looks really nice actually over pencil drawings. I've been noticing that actually with the pencil and wash, even with the yellow ochre and the other yellows, they just seem to lift the picture a little bit more and not make it quite so dull, which can be a bit of a problem with pencil and wash. But if you do a lot of underpainting with the yellows and try and include as many yellows as you can in the picture, for some reason it just seems very compatible with graphite. I don't know why. I mean, maybe that's just me, I don't know. But anyway, I'm using it again in the foreground there, gamboge. And just going in with a bit of ultramarine there. I thought that looked a little bit too cool, so I warmed it up with some scarlet red, basically the shadow colour that I used in the grass and those middle distant trees, just slightly stronger, just for some foreground shadows. I'm using yellow ochre for the path and just sort of softening it off there just along the top. I actually clean the brush and then just use it sort of slightly damp to try and lift out a little bit more of the paint just on the top there, just to create more of a highlight on the path. So the paper's only barely tinted with the yellow ochre. Now I'm using red ochre. It's the same colour as burnt sienna, it's just that red ochre is what white knights call it. I'm just putting that in the foreground area just to warm it up just a little bit and just letting it run into the yellow ochre. Now I'm using burnt umber just along the edge there and in the foreground. As you can see, I'm not properly used to these paints yet. That went on way too strong, so I had to sort of remove some of it and soften the rest out a little bit. I'm just strengthening the shadows up again with that purple mix. Just sort of little up and down brush strokes just to create a bit of a grass effect there. And then going in quite heavy right in the foreground there. So I'm just putting some shadows across the path. This is kind of where it went a bit wrong. I didn't get them dark enough to have the sort of maximum impact on the picture. I could have gone quite a bit darker there. They kind of just got lost in the foreground, but it didn't look too bad. It looked okay, but I know I could have got it a lot better if I'd have made the mix darker. just doing the same again there, just strengthening up a little bit the shadows on the grass. Same colour, just the scarlet red mixed with ultramarine blue, just to create that sort of purple shadow colour. I'm using that same colour in the tree there as well, just to try and make that just a little bit darker really. Didn't really have much effect once it had dried. Had a few problems there as well because the graphite was so sort of strong in places. It was a 2B pencil and it it's put on quite thick and really covered the paper, and the trouble with that is when you put watercolour on it, it kind of sits on top of the graphite and doesn't soak through into the paper. So what I do, I just kind of leave it for a minute or, well, not a minute or two, but sort of 30-40 seconds, and then I go back over it again with the brush, and that sort of seems to work. It seems to help it get into the paper a little bit more. And just adding a little bit more detail as well, just on the edges of the branches there, just putting in a few more little leaves and things. I just thought I just had a few little white flowers just in the foreground. They were there in the photo that I was copying, but obviously they were in shade, so they weren't sort of brilliant white. So what I'd done, I added a little bit of the shadow colour in with the white gouache, and didn't make the gouache too thick. Then the paint would soak into the paper a little bit and not be quite so bright, and it'd probably give the effect more that there was white flowers there but sort of in shade. So that's what I was just doing there. Now I'm starting to fiddle around with it a bit too much actually. I'm going in with some yellow, trying to strengthen the highlights there a bit, and adding a few more little spots here and there for yellow flowers, and probably overworking it a little bit actually. I'm probably trying to compensate for the bad foreground shadows, which should have been a lot darker, but I'm still learning, after painting all these years. I don't think we ever stop learning, do we? So yeah, I'm going in again with some more white gouache now, just a few little highlights here and there. So there's the finished painting. Definitely needed stronger foreground shadows, but it's not too bad. Anyway, I hope it was useful to you. Thanks very much for viewing. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.